Yes, it's that time of the week again for Sterlo's wrap-up. 6 rounds gone, absolutely flying, and plenty of good stuff to talk to. The great man's here, Peter Sterling.
Hello, James. Yeah, quarter of the way through the season already. Unbelievable.
Yeah, very good stuff. I'll tell you what, we've got lots to talk about. Let's get back to Thursday night, the grudge match. We were standing there in the middle of the SFS talking about the animosity between these two teams. Bragging rights going the Rabbitohs' way with a convincing win, and boy, they're looking good, aren't they, South Sydney?
It was a quality performance, and I love the fact that Trent Robinson set this up before the game, saying this is a match between friends who hate each other, and bragging rights so important in that part of Sydney. But I thought the South Sydney performance was really strong, and they got dominance in the middle third, and much of that had to do with the early work from Tom and George Burgess, beautifully backed up by the likes of John Sutton. Angus Crichton was excellent. Congratulations to Jason Clark, brought into the run-on side, 150 games, and he had a bottler as well. And then the outside men took advantage. Greg Inglis really getting back to his best. Ominous signs for New South Wales. But I just thought they were all over the Roosters, who...
patchy at the moment, aren't they?
I think that's the way to describe them. You know, we've seen some really good performances from them, but then in other matches they haven't been anything like supposed premiership favourites. So really good performance from South Sydney. Still plenty of work to be done for the Roosters.
The Roosters now in 6th, the Rabbitohs 7th after that match on Thursday night, 26-14 South Sydney over their arch rivals. Friday, the early kickoff, Melbourne in Melbourne after back-to-back losses. No team would want to be heading there to take them on, and the Newcastle Knights felt the full wrath, 40 points to 14, Pete.
And they felt it early, James. There was a string of penalties that really got Melbourne on the front foot. You know, in the first 10 minutes, both wingers were on the scoreboard, and that was always going to be an ominous sign. And then when possession swung around because of those penalties and Newcastle started to get some football, they came back into the game. Now, it's not a flattering scoreline, but again, we're going to see that with Newcastle this year, and we have done already on a couple of occasions. They're still very competitive, and they're going to win a number of matches. But when they come up against quality opposition like this, with a point to prove too, you would have thought that Melbourne went in after their last couple of performances really looking for something strong, and I think we saw that. Riley Jacks looked very comfortable coming in for Brodie Croft. Has obviously played more football in the top grade than Croft has. So there was the question mark as to how Craig Bellamy was going to handle that, and he handled it very successfully.
We got to see two Queenslanders in number 1 jerseys going head-to-head. Billy Slater, the current Queensland fullback, and we're expecting perhaps his successor in Callum Ponga.
This was a real standout moment for me because it's a sign of what we have but what will be. Now, Callum Ponga explodes through there, and you know that Billy Slater has to be coming into shot shortly and how this is going to come out. Does he have a left foot step? That's the reaction. There's a bit of a smile. And I think he'll do it a little bit differently next time. But it was just a great moment between the best number 1 our game has seen for a long time and potentially the best fullback that we've seen in a number of seasons. So I just thought it was a really nice moment there, handled beautifully by both number 1s, but a sign of the times.
Very quick thought, can you see Callum Ponga being in the Queensland squad this year?
I was interested. Brad Fitley yesterday was almost convinced that he would be coming off the bench for them. I'm not quite sure. I guess we'll know more in regards to players in form for Queensland who could occupy that role. But the very fact that he's in the conversation shows what an impact he's had in a short period of time for Newcastle.
Watch this space. Look, we were there at the Gong on Friday night to see the Dragons' unbeaten start to the year continuing. 40 points to 20 over the Cronulla Sharks. Second time they've beaten their local rivals. And boy, didn't they look good, clocking up plenty of points. They've averaged 31 leading into this game and got that end some.
Well, to me, that was a big surprise out of this game was the scoreline. 60 points scored in fairly greasy conditions in Wollongong, and certainly a very different game to what we saw the first time they met this season. But some outstanding individual efforts. This one from Cameron McInnes, obviously a couple from Matt Duffy. Cronulla came at them hard early in the second half. And that was after the Dragons had scored 2 tries and I think lost some intensity. I thought they kind of tuned out a little bit and that allowed Cronulla to come back into the game. But a no-try ruled against Josh Dugan after a small knock-on from, in fact, that man there, Valentine Holmes, just kind of put it burst the balloon and that sort of was the end of their run. And don't forget, Cronulla, major injury toll coming out of this during the course of the game. So it was... I don't think the scoreline reflected just how tight this one did get, but you've got to say that in the end, the Dragons still scored 40 points. and they remain unbeaten. And there's a real instinct in this game, in this football team. That's what I like about them. There's just a small play here where Gareth Widdop and Jack de Belin react to the defence. Now here it is, Paulo rushes up, so select pass from Gareth Widdop, and then the catch and pass almost into one motion from Jack de Belin, and Leeson Armour continues the run. So it takes it about 30 or 40 metres forward. But both players there, both ball players, reacted to what was in front of them. And that's what I like about this Dragon team. There's a lot of footballers, in inverted commas, in their lineup.
Saturday, the early kickoff, it was in Auckland, and there was an expectation the Broncos would no Matt Gillett, and on top of that, losing Cody Nikorima would be no chance. Anything but, in the end, 27 points to 18, handing the Warriors their first defeat of the season. Yeah,
and had to travel to do it as well, and that adds merit to the performance. I thought they were really good, Brisbane. I thought the Warriors, who've taken great strides this year in a lot of different ways, took a step back in that one. And you see there that the shoddy defence to allow this try, they had ample opportunity to deny the try score on that occasion. Blake Green got them back into it with a beautiful little kick there and regather. But in the end, I thought Warriors won, the Brisbane Broncos won very comfortably. That was on the back of the shock loss of Matt Gillett during the week. Sam Thaiday started the game. Young Jaden Sewer played well. Tagatese was called into the 17. Late flurry from the Warriors, but the better side won on this occasion, and I'm sure that Wayne Bennett would have got a lot of satisfaction out of that, because they were facing some adversity going into that game.
There'd been some big questions asked about Jack Bird, their big off-season recruit. Hadn't stepped up as yet. He was thrown into the halves. What did you make of his performance? Yeah. Could he stay there?
I think he's every chance of staying there, because I've always felt that Cody Nikorima's best serve in the top grade at the moment, coming off the bench. I think he's the perfect interchange player. The only concern, and I've expressed it on a number of occasions, is the kicking game that Brisbane probably lack in relation to a lot of other teams. Jack Bird can kick the football. He's not a long kicker. But I thought he was really good. And Jack Bird is still kind of running into condition. He had a long break after shoulder surgery. I thought he showed enough in this performance to certainly put in the mind of Wayne Bennett that he could be a long-term prospect there.
OK. Well, we saw there the Broncos clocking up 27 points on the Warriors. The Bulldogs clocked up 27 themselves on the North Queensland Cowboys, handing them a fifth straight loss. No one, Peter Sterling, would have seen that coming this early in the year.
No, not after the criticism as well of the North Queensland side and a couple of their leading players, most notably, I suppose, Jonathan Thurston. I really expected a reaction from them. Well, the reaction came from the Bulldogs, who looked strong early, built up a big lead. They got a couple of late points, the North Queensland side, which kind of flattered the scoreline a little bit. But this was a really dominant performance from the Bulldogs side, who are a better team than maybe what I thought they were going to be. Josh Jackson got his charge downgraded during the week. That helped their cause. The captain was there. I thought the Morris brothers defensively were outstanding. They were good, and there's huge question marks on just what the North Queensland side can do this season.
Yeah, well, they're not the only team with a big question mark over them at the moment. The Eels, 0-6, 18 points to 2, beaten by the Canberra Raiders in Canberra. And Pete's starting to get to that point where there doesn't seem to be any answers to the questions that are being asked.
Well, we're not starting to get to that point. We're at that point. Yeah. And what really disappointed me was these first two tries conceded. We just saw Leilua and Rapana combined down the blind side, and then Blake Austin score from a dummy. On your tip sheet going into a Canberra game, they're the first two things. If Joseph Leilua is at dummy half inside the attacking 20, he always goes the short side, always goes the blind looking for Rapana. They didn't cover that. And if Blake Austin's got the football, you've got to be prepared for the dummy. So the first two concession of tries, I thought were just real. They hadn't done their homework. But outside of that, the inability to score points for Parramatta is a huge concern. Penalty goal on half-time, that was all they could manage. They were lucky to get that. So they lack variety, but there's no simple answers. I can't say if they fix this and everything's going to change. It's got to be an all-round approach through hard work. They do have to stop giving away penalties. They do have to try a little bit more with the football, which is not easy to do with confidence. They do have to start playing a little bit more for each other and not just be concerned about what their role is. They have to take on more responsibility than that. And somehow they've got to have belief in there and confidence that they can get that done. So you find out a lot about football teams in these instances, more so than when you've won 6 in a row. This is now a test of character. No side has gone on to play finals football with such a poor start. There are 18 games to go. Parramatta have an opportunity to do something really special here, but they need to dig deep to do so, and they need to show. They need to look at the West's Tigers tapes and play the kind of football we're seeing from the Tigers, which is magnificent in relation to that they're playing for each other on every play.
Do you find it hard to see them coming back and putting together a miracle?
Oh, sorry, I thought it was hard to watch them. It is hard to watch at the moment, but I still have faith there because we are only a quarter of the way through the season, so there is time to turn things around, but we're running out of time really quickly. You talked
earlier about the Dragons playing the natural football with the flair and the instinct. There was a moment in that match against the Raiders on Saturday night, wasn't it, that led to a Mitchell Moses kick that perhaps should never have eventuated.
Well, I'm calling for variety in their play, but this is third tackle after Corey Norman had just got the side back football through 2 repeats. They'd had a string of penalties. And I look at that play, I like the early kick, but it can't be Mitchell Moses, and to me it looked this way, deciding that, OK, on tackle scrum, I'm going to kick. Nick Kotrick is back there anyway. So you've just handed the football over mid-count after you've established some momentum and some field position. Now, that was a terrible play. And again, it just made it easier for Canberra to defend. So if you're going to kick early, you kick early in reaction to what's in front of you, not what you think is going to be there 3 plays later. And that was just a key moment that I thought, Parramatta had a great opportunity there. They built up the pressure that you so desire, and then they just handed the football back.
The early kick-off on Sunday, the Gold Coast Titans visiting the Penrith Panthers. It was Garth Brennan going back to where it all began before he took on a chief NRL coaching role with the Gold Coast. 35 points to 12. Penrith now second on the ladder. A convincing performance. Pete.
Yeah, and the Titans got away to a good start. We saw Dale Copley score there early to take an early lead, and Penrith only led by a smallish margin going into half-time. But then in the second half, it was all about this man, James Maloney, playing some great football. The young fullback, Edwards, outstanding as well. But on the back of a really good performance from the forward pack once again. Great combination there, and they look like they're enjoying their football. Tyrone Peachey. I heard Anthony Griffin say that the way that they played the second half, especially in the way that James Maloney took control, it allowed Tyrone Peachey to run the football. And that's what we all know he is best at. I'm not too disappointed in the Gold Coast performance. They actually lost a player to the HIA bin in the warm-up in Morgan Boyle. That certainly is unheard of. And they came up against a very confident Penrith team that have now won 3 on the trot, sit comfortably in the top 4, and I think are going to be there. When you consider the talent they have unavailable for selection at the moment, this is really good stuff from Penrith.
A final thought from you today on the West Tigers, 38 beating the Manly Sea Eagles 12. Look, we knew the Tigers were going to put up a good fight going on form, but I don't think many would have picked it would be so comprehensive and a 75-25 possession percentage count the first half alone.
Well, that was the big thing, is that the Manly side had no football. I have never seen statistics so one-sided after 40 minutes of football. Now, Trent Barrett was scathing in regards to his team. He felt that if they could have gone in 14-0 behind at half-time, then that was manageable. That, after what the mountain of possession against him, they could have come back from that. But to go in 26-0 down, the 2 tries conceded not far out from half-time, that really hurt his football team. He said they have to be much more resilient than what they are at the moment. But this West Tigers team, we know defensively how good they've been. Well, they flexed their attacking muscle here on the back of that possession. And Luke Brooks was fantastic. Just saw James Maloney a dominant performance. Well, Luke Brooks was as good as any number 7 performance we've seen this season. Benji Marshall was great on the outside. Perfect introduction for Josh Reynolds. Came into the game basically when it was already won, so there's no real pressure on the scoreboard that he has to worry about. He was blowing when he came off. So he had a short stint out there, out of dummy half. Great introduction for him. Wonderful performance from the West Tigers. But when you've had 75% of the football and built up a 26-0 lead, you win the game.
Yeah, and it wasn't made any easier. There's probably a point where a soft penalty.
I thought that this penalty was a really fortuitous one for the West Tigers. They're going nowhere. That's 5th tackle, and they get the easy out. And honestly, from that moment on, and we're only 3 minutes into the game, from that moment on, Manly were never in it going into half-time.
Yep.
They had no football, no field position, and that was a very, very early turning point. But I thought it was a lucky penalty that the West Tigers received. But having said that, if you give away penalties, especially that early in the game, you've got to be able to defend them. Manly should have been better. But the West Tigers, they've been the revelation for me this season. Great stuff from them. Congratulations to Ivan Cleary. And nice to see Josh Reynolds back as well.
The tipping nightmare continues. How'd you go this week?
I went all the home teams,
Oh,
James.
right.
When in doubt, go the home team. And no, it's not a good plan.
All right,
No.
good. I'm glad to know I'm not alone.
Just put a line through that.
Yep, as always, Peter Stirling, thank you very much.
Thanks, James.
That's Stillo's wrap-up after the 6th round of the National Rugby League.